All right, as far as my background, I have a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. I also have a certificate in general education. I got that from my community college, but that's not my entire education. Let's take a stroll down memory lane. So, in 10th grade, I took my very first programming class. We learned about Visual Basic. I really enjoyed the class. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. As a kid, I was always fascinated by computers and I knew I wanted to do something with computers. I just hadn't figured out what that was specifically. So when I came across programming, I'm like, this is awesome. So, excuse me. So like the more I played around with Visual Studio Code, being a 10th grader, you're starting to think about college, like what I want to major in. And I did a little research and I came across computer science. So I narrowed it down to the school I wanted to go to. And I officially declared my major as computer science. So when I got to college, now here's where things turned upside down. I went from being like at the top of my class in high school to the bottom of my class in college. A lot of that was because I never learned how to learn. In high school, it's almost like you don't necessarily have to learn. It's just how well can you memorize something. And like, I think that's really just what it was. And then when I got to college, like that's not how it worked at all. And it was a weird transition for me. And also it was a different programming language. I went from Visual Basic to, I think my very first coding class was Java, if I'm not mistaken. And to this day, I couldn't tell you anything about Java besides public static void main string bracket args. Like will be forever ingrained into my brain. But yeah, so my freshman year of college, programming class went okay. It just wasn't, I guess it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I liked it. It just was really hard for me. And like, I went to UVA, for context. And I don't know if anyone knows anything about UVA. Usually, like, for the most part, people who were at the top of their class, like, it's a whole school of the top of their class. So especially in the School of Engineering, it was pretty competitive to get in. And I just felt like everyone around me just got it. And like, they just understood what was going on. And like, I just felt completely lost. And the more classes that I took, it was just my programming. My other classes went fine, but just like programming, it just was not clicking. And like, I still hadn't learned how to learn. And me personally, I hadn't established myself financially. I didn't come from a family that had a lot of money. So I was surrounded by people who had cars already and, everything else. Maybe they probably never even had to work. I started working my senior year in high school just to save up money to pay for my books when I got to college. So I guess for me, my basic needs weren't met. And that's one thing I learned about myself, that when I have to worry about money, it's like I can't focus. I can't give my all, I guess, to anything else. So I started working. I was like a referee on campus for intramural sports. Then I started working at the gym on campus. And I just became more interested in working than I did school. So by the time, fast forward to the end of my sophomore year, like my grades were awful to the point that I was on academic suspension, I think. Like, I don't think I could have even gone back to school the next year. I think I had to like wait out a year, then come back. And I was like, you know what? Like, this just wasn't working out. So I decided to withdraw from the school. I actually got lucky because that summer I had landed a pretty decent paying job. So I just started working. And then I went back to my community college and I probably changed my major, I kid you not, 10 times, anywhere from IT to business, back to computer science. I remember I took my very first web development course. Mind you, I'm 34, so this was back in 2008. And web development hadn't advanced to what it is now. So when I took that course, it didn't like intrigue me as much. All right, so from 2008 to 2010, like I said, I took a bunch of random classes, and around probably the end of 2010, at the time I had just started working as a correctional officer, and I was like, you know what? Like, this isn't something that I can see myself doing. Like, I want to go back to school. Like, I was motivated to go to school again. I guess around that time, my basic needs were met, so I could then focus on something else. So I remember seeing counselors around, and I asked one of them, what were the qualifications? And they said, yes, you just have to have a bachelor's degree in a social science field. So I looked into it, and because I had taken so many random classes from changing my major, that when I transferred all my general education classes, I got transfer credit. And I literally only needed, I kid you not, like 11 classes, and I'd have a bachelor's degree. Like, it was that simple. I did all that in a year and a half, and I had my degree. So I was a counselor. So once I graduated, I finally got my first counselor role around like May 2014. And from then on, every like 2 or 3 years or so, I either get a promotion or like transfer. My idea was, it was so hard for me to get my foot in the door as a counselor that I wanted to make sure that I had experience with every population. And that's exactly what I did. So fast forward, I stayed in that field until June 7th of 2021. I realized that my career had run its course. And to be honest, my career was kind of an accident. Like, when I was in high school, like, I never dreamed of being a counselor. It just, I guess it was like my runner-up choice. Ironically, I remember when I used to take those job assessment tests, it would either say engineer or counselor. And so I just think it's funny, like, in hindsight, that I literally had both roles. So like, that was entirely accurate. But yeah, I always had like this thought in the back of my mind, like, what if, I had stuck with it, or I decided to go back to school after my 1 year of academic suspension? Like, what would my life be like? I just felt like where I wasn't where I was meant to be forever. I'm a firm believer of do what you can do do what you have to do until you get to a point that you can do what you want to do. And I guess that's the purpose that being a counselor serves, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. So I'm thankful for that. I wouldn't necessarily say that I regret that career, because it allowed me to have the opportunity that I was able to give myself these past couple months that I was embarking in my coding journey. So it definitely wasn't in vain. But yeah, I remember driving to work one day, and I just asked myself, like, why do you keep coming here? Like, why do you keep doing it? Because like, I stopped enjoying it a while ago, to be honest. And I literally had no answer. And I was like, you know what? Like, the more I thought about it, I started to crunch the numbers, and like, I was seeing, like, realistically, how long could I support myself without working? Because like, I was beyond burnout at my job at the time, and I just wanted to change. And I'm like the biggest non-risk taker there is. I was always that person that I would never quit my job until I had another one lined up. Even if I hated my job and it took me 2 years to find a job, I would just be at that job hating it for 2 years until I found another one. But like, finally, I don't know, I want to do something different. And like, I remember the quote, if you want something you never had before, you have to do something you've never done before. And like, that just kept like speaking to me. So finally I was like, you know what, like, I'm going to do it. So I decided that I would quit my job and learn to code full time. So on June 7th, that was my last day at my job. And that's what I've been doing, is learning to code ever since then. So a lot of people I remember would comment, like, because I know I'd post my Waka time sometime, like, great day, like, how did you code for 15 hours or whatever? Like, I literally treated it like a job. Like, I'd wake up, code all day long. And I kept it up to the point that it became a habit.